Does it matter if the Switch 2 launch lineup was bad? And also, what does that even mean? I think the best place to start probably is to define what a good launch lineup would be. And I think the easy answer there is probably that it's a launch lineup that has enough games in a wide enough span of genres that everybody who could potentially buy the console would have something that they'd be happy about. The less easy answer is that the console launches with a game that is so good, it makes all of the other nothingness surrounding it meaningless. I think look no further there than the first 3 Nintendo consoles. The NES launched with Super Mario Bros., which changed everything. The Super Nintendo launched with Super Mario World, again changing everything. And then the N64 launched with Mario 64, which is like the ultimate through the looking glass huge moment for video games. A lot of developers are still trying to catch up with what Nintendo did on those 3 games. That's how big they were, and they were launch titles for those consoles. And to swerve outside of Nintendo for a second, the first Xbox launched with Halo, which changed everything for first-person shooters on consoles, at least in terms of the way they controlled. But if you want an example of a console that actually launched with a pretty great well-rounded launch lineup, look no further, believe it or not, than the Sega Dreamcast, which launched with the first Sonic Adventure, the first Soul Calibur, Ready to Rumble Boxing, Power Stone, NFL Blitz, Hydro Thunder, the home port of the arcade game House of the Dead 2, Tokyo Extreme Racer, and a bunch of other great games. And I actually think the Sega Dreamcast's great launch lineup works as a perfect inverse of the title of this video, which is, does it even matter if a launch lineup is good? Because in the case of the Sega Dreamcast, it didn't help. It didn't help at all. Let's shift the focus back to Nintendo for a second, because we are talking about the Switch 2 after all. And I think there are a couple specific consoles in the Nintendo console oeuvre that really explain what's going on with the Switch 2. And I think the first one that we should look at is the GameCube. I think the GameCube is actually the most important, because the GameCube is a console that today, beloved. People love that library. People are stoked about the GameCube. But at the time, it was a critical and commercial failure. A lot of kids who loved the GameCube and had one growing up have now grown up and changed the conversation around the GameCube. But if you go look at articles from when the GameCube came out, it was not doing very well. It was not doing hot. It was getting absolutely bodied by the PlayStation 2 left and right. And a big focus of that discourse around the GameCube was actually its launch lineup. Because like I mentioned, NES, Super Mario Bros., Super Nintendo, Super Mario World, N64, Mario 64, the GameCube, no Mario, Luigi's Mansion. Now again, Luigi's Mansion has in the years since taken on a life of its own. People really liked it. When people got it, when it came out, they really loved it. Luigi's Mansion is a very good video game. I've played it multiple times. I think it's fantastic. But also, it's not a medium defining, shifting the landscape of the entire industry video game like the 3 other ones. It's, Luigi with a button to make him go Mario over and over again and kind of Ghostbusters adjacent. It's Nintendo's Resident Evil, and that's all very cool, but it's all stuff that could have been done before technically. As with most Nintendo games, Luigi's Mansion I think is greater than the sum of those parts. But at the time, the conversation around it was, where's the Mario game? But the GameCube launch lineup actually wasn't so bad. It was pretty decent. Just to go down the list really quick, you had All-Star Baseball 2002, Batman Vengeance, a game that some people like, Crazy Taxi, a port of the Dreamcast game, Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2, Disney's Tarzan Untamed, Luigi's Mansion, you got a Madden, you got an NHL Hits, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader, a game that absolutely whips, the first Super Monkey Ball, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, a great video game, and Wave Race Blue Storm, another pretty good video game. That's a pretty decent launch lineup. And yet all of the conversation was so laser focused on Luigi's Mansion. It was, where's the Mario game? Why are we getting this Luigi thing when we could be getting a Mario? Where is Mario? Let's put a pin in the GameCube for a second because we have to circle back to it later. But let's talk about the Nintendo DS really quick. The Nintendo DS is one of the best-selling consoles of all time. It's also a console that most people would agree has a fantastic library. But at launch, it had only a few video games, and these are them. Asphalt Urban GT, Feel the Magic XYXX, another Madden, Metroid Prime Hunters The First Hunt, which was a demo for Metroid Prime Hunters, not actually the game Metroid Prime Hunters, Spider-Man 2, like the PS2 game, but very much not the PS2 game, Super Mario 64 DS, a port of Super Mario 64, but with worse controls. I loved it, though. I mean, growing up, that was the way that I got to play Super Mario 64. So I'm a big fan of it, but that's a game that a lot of people did not look very kindly on when it came out. And then Herb's Sims in the City. You have 7 video games launching for this thing that is supposed to be, hypothetically, the future of Nintendo handhelds. Although at the time, Nintendo was saying that the DS was just going to be parallel to the Game Boy Advance, and that's why it had a Game Boy Advance slot in it as well. It was like, oh, worst case scenario, it's backwards compatible with the Game Boy Advance, but we're going to keep supporting the Game Boy Advance. That's going to go great. And then obviously the DS took off like wildfire, and the Game Boy Advance was abandoned. But at the time, Nintendo was not being that forthcoming about what the DS was supposed to do. But think about all of the games you love on the Nintendo DS. Think about how huge of an impact the Nintendo DS probably had on your life, realistically, if you're watching this YouTube channel and this video. How many of those games are present in the ones that I just went through? There's not a whole lot to choose from, and I would assume pretty much everybody got Mario 64 like I did. That launch lineup did not impact the long-term viability of the Nintendo DS, clearly. I mean, look at those numbers. They're wild. Let's move on to the Nintendo 3DS, because the 3DS is really interesting in that, like the GameCube, it's taken on this completely different life from what it was at launch. Because at launch, the 3DS was not doing well. Let's look at the launch titles for the Nintendo 3DS real quick, starting with the 3 first-party titles that they launched with. Pilot Wings Resort, Steel Diver, and Nintendogs and Cats. That's all you got for the 3DS at launch from Nintendo. On the third-party side, there was a lot more. You had Street Fighter 4, you had The Sims 3, Madden, there's Pro Evolution Soccer, Lego Star Wars 3, Ridge Racer 3D, Super Monkey Ball 3D, Bust-A-Move Universe, Samurai Warriors Chronicles, Asphalt 3D, Combat of Giants, Dinosaurs 3D. I have no idea what that... I've never heard of that before in my life, actually, until this moment doing this video. I gotta find out what that is. All right, welcome to Combat of Giants, Dinosaurs 3D. It's a game by Ubisoft. We're going to play it together and find out what it is. I'm going to create an empty profile. It's the Earth. Data written successfully. You love to see it, don't you, folks? Primeval Earth, 150 million years ago. The dinosaur races shared the ancient land respectfully. Under the protection of the 4 great chiefs, the fury of the Archosaurus was contained. Is that the Archosaurus? Oh, that's the whole story. Okay. Oh my god. All right. Zilla, a Tyrannosaurus. Cuz the Carnotaurus. Okay, wait a second. I'm getting great energy from Cuz immediately. Zoltok. I'm not reading that. Solly. Krisak. Aubrey. Kanan. Mojave. And we're back at Zilla. I mean, we gotta go with Cuz. There's no way we're bailing on Cuz, right? But let's figure out what we could do customization-wise. Stripes. Okay. This is, yeah, very dinosaur adjacent. I get it. Oh, I see fire. I see flames. We could have a Guy Fieri thing going. Oh, stars. Okay. Wait, let's see what we got. Oh, blue. Okay, wait a second. If it's gonna be, if I don't have the option of having like red flames, then I think we have to go with stars, and I think we have to go with dark blue stars on a yellow body. And what does primary do? Oh, I see. We'll do dark blue on the bottom to match Cuz's stars. Data written successfully. All right, we're hitting start. That's Cuz. We get to find out what the video game is. They spared no expense. All right. Oh, we're playing. Wow. Okay. Well, so far it's a game where I am a dinosaur and I run around, roam the land, and defeat Archosaurus' minions. Wow, I can't wait to find out what combat is like in this game. This is a Triceratops. I think if I were a Triceratops and I saw a Carnotaurus
covered in blue stars, I would not be itching for a fight. Sorry, its weakness is attacks? Isn't that everything's weakness? All right. B to attack. Fight. Is this just a fighting game? Are there other buttons? Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are. This is a fighting game. Wow. Absolutely brutalized. KO stands for Cuz's offensive. I found an epic plate of health. I love that for me. And for specifically, I love that for Cuz. Oh, I discovered something big. There's a roar button. I love that. Collect bones to unlock customization options and fun facts. That's a bone. Wait, I'm so excited to unlock a fun fact. Is this our next combatant? Yoshimitsu? Wow. That's Cuz. It's never not funny that it says the weakness is attacks. Okay, dodge. I'm going to start by doing what I did before. Oh, okay, wait a second. Oh, all right. I mean, I'm taking this thing to town. And by that I mean Cuz is. Cuz is unstoppable. We picked the best character, definitely. There's no way any other character is better than Cuz. Okay, here's the thing. Does this game rock? Like, not once in all of the time I've spent playing and researching Nintendo 3DS games have I heard of this thing. But honestly, like, I mean, I understand why, but it is incredible that this exists, and I'm having a great time with it. I mean, just look at this. Look at this beautiful vista, and look what happens when I press the Y button. Cuz just lets out a big yell. As he should. I love Cuz. Cuz is actually, I think, the best character I've seen in media this year. I love when Ubisoft has a big swing with a new Nintendo console. And I love that in the case of the Nintendo Wii U, it was Zombie U, and in the case of the Nintendo 3DS, it was Combat of Giants, Dinosaurs 3D. The Ionosaurus. Guess what its weaknesses are? Learning your opponent's fight pattern is the key to winning. What about if it learns my fight pattern? Which is dodge every attack and then just headbutt repeatedly. Cuz is unstoppable. The Cuz offensive continues. Cuz wins. I found a great scale. And the data was written successfully, so things are going great. Missed it, I think. You have unlocked the color black to use in customization. That's really exciting. And I found a strong horn. Hang on. Let's take a look here. Dino strike damage. How is that different from attack, I wonder? Oh. The boss fight. The big guy. What if a Triceratops with even more horns? And that's it. Cuz took out the big one. The Cuz offensive. Victorious. Level cleared. Wow. I found another strong horn. Absolutely incredible. Data written successfully. That's Combat of Giants. Dinosaurs 3D for the Nintendo 3DS. Let's get back to the video.
The 3DS was not a beloved console when it came out. A lot of people were eagerly anticipating what is going to be the next thing that follows up the Nintendo DS, and they announced the 3DS. It's got this glassesless 3D thing, et cetera, et cetera. It kind of, honestly, in retrospect, has a little bit of the Wii U problem, where a lot of people heard about the Wii U for the first time and thought it might have just been an accessory that you could buy for your Nintendo Wii. The 3DS doesn't exactly sound like a new thing, which is, I guess, why when they released the new 3DS, they were putting a lot of emphasis on that new, not realizing that I actually made it even more confusing. The new 3DS of it all was a weird time for Nintendo. But anyway, the 3DS comes out and does not sell. People are not buying it. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the price of the console was too high, but I think a lot of it also had to do with the launch lineup. There weren't really a lot of games that people wanted to play on the Nintendo 3DS. And famously, Satoru Iwata, who was the head of Nintendo at the time, maybe one of the only good CEOs to have ever lived, cut his own pay to make sure that he didn't have to lay off anybody at Nintendo, which was great. Simultaneously, they slashed the price of the 3DS, and for the people who had bought it in that intervening period, the first couple months of the 3DS, kind of unprecedented to slash the price as much as they did in the first couple months of a console's launch. Everybody who bought it in those first couple months got a bunch of Game Boy Advance games via the Virtual Console that no one was ever allowed to get ever again. They were only available legally if you were part of this ambassador program as some of the first people to buy the 3DS. All of that, plus eventually releasing a bunch of great games, made the 3DS what it became, which is, again, a hugely, hugely, hugely successful console that a lot of people think about very, very, very fondly these days. All of those games, Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem, all three Zeldas, Super Mario, like all of that stuff came way later. All of that brings us back to the Nintendo Switch 2, a console that is already doing very well from a sales perspective. It has already sold an estimated over 6 million units. I think the big test, as a lot of people have said online, is going to come this holiday season because all the people, the 6 million people who bought it at launch are all Nintendo diehards. They're all Switch diehards. They're all people who are going to buy it no matter what. The big test is it too expensive for like a regular person to buy in the holiday season? And is it available enough for people to buy at the holiday season? But what are those people playing when they get the Nintendo Switch 2? Well, let's look at what people were playing when they got the Nintendo Switch 2 in June, when it came out. They were playing Mario Kart World, the Switch 2 editions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Bravely Default HD Remaster, which is a remaster of a 3DS game, Survival Kids, a new video game, Rune Factory Guardians of Ozma, a game that had come out a couple weeks earlier on PC and elsewhere, but nice to see on Switch. Split Fiction, relatively new, but a port of a game you could play elsewhere. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, that game's been out for a little while. Cool to see it running on the Switch, but again, it's a port. You got a port of Street Fighter 6, you got a port of Civilization 7, you got a port of Cyberpunk 2077, a port of Hogwarts Legacy, a port of Yakuza 0. They list Fortnite as a launch title. I guess it counts because it has, mouse controls and stuff. Deltarune Chapters 1 through 4, which I actually do think in some ways is like the dark horse candidate for best launch title on the Switch 2 in some ways, even though it did launch everywhere else. It was cool to launch with the Switch 2. Fast Fusion, again, a new video game and a really good one. If you are sleeping on Fast Fusion, you should go check it out, especially if you're like an F-Zero fan or like a Wipeout fan. You should look at that game. It is very cool. Hitman World of Assassination, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, which is cool. Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening Complete Edition. I actually don't know what that is. I should check that out. Sonic X Shadow Generations, again, a game that has been out for a while elsewhere. And No Man's Sky, which has been out for an entire console generation already. The game I didn't mention is the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which I and a lot of other people wonder why you need to pay for in the first place. It really feels like it should have been the Wii Sports. It should have been the pack-in game, and it wasn't. Look, I have it. I think it's fine. Interesting side note, I read Reggie Fils-Aimé's book. He has a book which is less about Nintendo history than you think it is. It's more of like a self-help book for executives, which is fascinating. But in it, he does mention how difficult it was to convince the people at Nintendo of Japan that there should be a pack-in game ever in any console. He fought really hard to get a pack-in game with the Nintendo DS and fought really hard to get Wii Sports packed in with the Nintendo Wii. It seems like that's just not a thing that Nintendo really wants to ever do. We saw that on the Switch 1 with 1-2 Switch, or Everybody 1-2 Switch? No, 1-2 Switch was the first one. Everybody 1-2 Switch is the one that everybody forgot exists, right? I just remembered it right now. I think that was literally like the memory of Everybody 1-2 Switch, like excising itself from my body like a ghost, like, I'm here still. Anyway, that's the launch lineup for the Nintendo Switch 2. And honestly, I think the biggest problem with it is that Mario Kart World takes all of the focus. It takes all of the energy. It is the like gravity well that all eyes are pointed at. It's kind of like the GameCube with Luigi's Mansion, right? Like Luigi's Mansion is the game that everybody wanted to talk about and everybody was interested in, and everybody was either like stoked or mad about. And it made everybody forget that Super Monkey Ball also existed. The thing about Mario Kart World is that it's a little bit of a coin flip if you like it or not. I reviewed Mario Kart World. You can go watch that review. And in that review, I said basically, I like that game a lot as it is right now, but I don't think it's better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Hopefully, eventually, Nintendo will update it over time and it will be better than 8 Deluxe. I think that it will get there eventually. I have hope. Right after I posted that review, though, Nintendo updated the game and made it worse. I'm still holding on to hope, though. Don't let me down, Nintendo. But the thing about Mario Kart World is that if you don't like it, what are you left with? The answer is a lot of ports. That's kind of it. On the flip side, and to throw Nintendo a bone here, what you're really actually left with is a bunch of ports, but also the entire Nintendo Switch 1 library, in a lot of cases, with unadvertised improvements that make the games even better than they were when you played them on the Switch 1. Some games are a step backwards, and a lot of games are a step forward, which is really cool. It's really nice to be able to play a game on the Nintendo Switch 2 and say, wow, this kind of feels like a new experience for me. If I had to guess for a lot of people, and look deep into your heart, and you might find this to be true, a lot of people's favorite Nintendo Switch 2 games are actually just Nintendo Switch 1 games that they're playing on the Nintendo Switch 2, and that's totally fine. Okay, let's take that pin out of talking about the GameCube for a second, because while the GameCube launched with a bunch of great titles, a lot of people thought that it wasn't enough, right? If you didn't like Luigi's Mansion, you were kind of out of luck because a lot of people weren't taking chances on the other stuff in that lineup. And what that meant was that you needed to wait until the next big thing came out. The brilliant thing about how Nintendo supported the GameCube, though, is that they were not making people wait very long for the big stuff. The big guns were coming very soon. For example, 1 month after the launch of the GameCube, you got Super Smash Bros. Melee, and that could have been it, you know? Flip Luigi's Mansion and Super Smash Bros. Melee, and I think the conversation around the GameCube might have been completely different. Looking at the Nintendo Switch 2, I kind of feel that way again. Donkey Kong Bonanza so obviously should have been the launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2. Even if that meant pushing the launch of the Switch 2 1 month into July to make sure that Donkey Kong Bonanza could launch with it, I think that would have been totally fine. But if it had launched with Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World came a month later, I think people would be having completely different conversations about the Switch 2. The interesting thing about this video is that I actually wrote the outline before Bonanza came out. In some ways, waiting to make it now, I think has actually proven my point even more, because the conversation around the Switch 2 has shifted so dramatically since the release of Bonanza. While a lot of people were like bummed about the Switch 2's launch lineup, at this point, with Mario Kart World and Bonanza, that might actually be enough for most people. If you don't like Mario Kart World, you might like Bonanza, and if you don't like Bonanza, you might like Mario Kart World, and at least you have 2 things to choose from here, and it's not going to be too long until there's a bunch of other stuff to choose from as well. There's a new Pokemon game, there's a new Metroid, and there's a bunch of other stuff coming down the pipeline that we don't even know about still. I think the Switch 2 is going to have a pretty good first year, and it's going to be not so dissimilar from what Nintendo did with the GameCube and eventually did with the Nintendo 3DS, saving that console. The thing about the Switch 2 is that it doesn't need to be saved. It's already successful. It already sold really well. It's sold well enough, at least, that there's no world in which a bunch of developers bail from their supporting the Switch 2 the way they did from the Wii U, for example. So to go back to the top of the video, does it matter if the Switch 2 launch lineup was bad? You gotta ask yourself what that even means in the first place. Do you think it was bad? And if so, what does that even really mean in the long term? It doesn't really mean a whole lot in terms of the units that it'll sell, because as we've seen with the DS and the 3DS and the GameCube and the Dreamcast, the launch lineup doesn't really have that much of a long-term effect when it comes to how a console is perceived or sells. So it really just comes down to like, how impatient are you between the launch of a console and the first game that you really like for it? Did you need to buy it at launch if you think the launch lineup is bad? I think that's a maybe better question to ask yourself. Are you like me? You have a video game podcast, multiple video game podcasts, and a YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. You're probably going to buy the thing, but for most people, still, I don't know if I would recommend getting the Switch 2 yet. Like, I would say, hey, wait a little bit. See if some of the games go on sale. Maybe buy them used, whatever. I don't think you need to buy one yet. I don't think there's enough software on the Switch 2 really to validate a purchase at the moment. But, you know, that's just me. At the end of the day, all this stuff is really subjective, and it seems to have absolutely no bearing on how a console sells. So sorry if this video wrapped up in a big nothing burger for you, but I think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting to look at the history of launch titles and figure out which ones worked out and which ones didn't and what that means. And at least in the span of doing all the research for this, it was kind of fascinating to find out that it means nothing. I hope you think it was fascinating that it meant nothing also. Nothing means anything. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, baby.